part 2 of this round 4 of the Regents review. So we'll start with this one, right? I feel like I've said before, you're going to see a bunch of these, and I kind of like these just because you can use your calculator. You're given two functions, and it wants to know what the solution of q of x equals r of x to the nearest tenth. Now, I always say if I write these equal to each other, like I don't want to, even if I could solve this, right? I don't want to spend all the time to try to solve something that's got like a cubic, a log. So what am I going to do? I'm going to just go to my calculator. I'm going to graph both functions, right? So I'm making sure, right, first of all, that I'm trying to, I take my time inputting this, right? This is just a plain old log, so you can write log, but make sure you're doing to the power of 3. When I graph this, what am I left with? I'm left with something that looks like this, right? So my red line is going to be my log. Kind of looks like that. Then I have my cubic, which is going to be my blue line. It kind of looks something like this little dip and goes like that, right? Then you go into your calculator, right? Once you have that, you can hit second trace, which is going to bring up like the calc functions. You go to number 5, intersect. I would go on my, in this case, I swap the colors, right? But my blue line would be first, my red line, you guess the point where they meet. And, right, it gives you the one point where they meet, which is 3.72, 1.14. You're always looking for, in this case, the values of your x values. So, boom, 3.7 is the one that's rounded to the nearest 10th. Sweet. Use your calculator for this one. Calculator. Number 7. I got a volume saying, right, first of all, we have the volume of a cardboard box can be modeled by v of x, which is the product of, right, the length, the width, the height. They're giving you, right, the info for the volume. The length can be represented by 18 minus 2x, the width by 18 minus 2x. Which function represents v of x? I look at this, right? They're giving me my width. They're giving me my length. Well, I saw a couple of you, right? You just went and multiplied this. This would only give me my area, right? And they kind of hide the height, which is x in here. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to still multiply 18 minus 2x times 18 minus 2x. And then at the end, I'm going to make sure, right, that I have that x. And I kind of multiply everything and raise it to another power of x again, right? So if I multiply 18, this, right, 18 times 18, I'm just looking at these numbers, right? I know it's got to be 324. Then 18 minus 2x is going to be negative 36x. My inners, another minus 36x. And then my last, negative 2x times negative 2x is positive 4x squared. Right, this simplifies down to, if I just flip things around, right, I'm going to say 4x squared minus 72x plus 324. And then don't forget about what, right? I gotta, since it's volume, I have to multiply by the height. And that just raises the exponent, right, of all my values of x here, right? So we're going to look at now, my answer would be answer choice number 2, right? Because it's 4x cubed minus 72x squared plus 324x, right? Once I distribute that. Not too bad. Number 8, right? This is one where, like I said, if you have a multiple choice question, yes, you can go and start to try to solve for x, y, or z, right? They're looking for which one, the value of y. I would just go, right, and use that matrix function just to save yourself some time on a question like this. If I did use the matrix function, right, it comes out and I would get answer choice number 3, right? Because I'm looking for the value of y. And let me just make sure my calculator. Oops. Value of y was, the value of x is negative 3, y is 3, and z is 6. So good to go. Last one, right? You have an angle. It's in standard position whose terminal side passes through the point. Negative 3, negative 4. Which statement is true? So you're getting a bunch of info here, right? But the biggest thing is, look, negative 3, negative 4, right? If I'm thinking about negative 3, negative 4, I know, right? And I made an angle. Where does it have to go, right? It has to go into my third quadrant because everything in my third quadrant is what? Negative, negative, right? And then from here, right, I just want to think about my, like, the info for my trig functions, right? Which is, I know in quadrant one, everything, right, or all is positive. In quadrant 2, only my sine is positive. Quadrant 3, only my tangent is positive. And in quadrant 4, only my cosine is positive, right? So right off the bat, right, I know my tangent has to be positive, so 1 still works. 2 I can cross off. 3 I can cross off. And I know 4 still works. Now I go back to my secant. Well, secant is just the reciprocal of cosine. So over here, right, secant is basically just like 1 over the cosine of something. That's my secant, right? But if I have something, right, I know cosine has to be negative over here. So if I put 1 over the cosine, it's still going to be negative. So I know my secant my secant has to be negative. So the only answer choice will be answer choice number 4. You really should memorize, right, that everything over here is positive, right? All signs. Only here would be sine and then cosecant, right? Over here, tangent and cotangent, and then over here, cosine and secant, right? And those are on one of the practice sets that I made for you. All right, part 2 in the books.